welcome back to Cast Me to Hell with me, Seb.
And me, Robbie.
And this week we return to our book v film season with Carrie.
Yes. We've done quite a bit of Stephen King on this, but I think this is the first book versus film that we've done of his.
We did Doctor Sleep.
We did Doctor Sleep. Okay, proven wrong.
I think that was our first book through film.
It might have been.
I think that might have been.
Right.
There you go.
There we go.
Not to knock you down a peg there with your assumption, but
knock
I'm
me down
afraid
a peg,
that.
please.
I mean, we recently did our American Psycho episode. So obviously, if you didn't hear that one, go check it out. So that was our first kind of delve into it. Now, this was actually a feature that we've been literally waiting months to complete. American Psycho was sat there for a good while, actually, where we'd done it, but we were like, maybe we should save it for this season. And then we've got a couple of films coming up during this. So this is our second out of 3 book review films that will now happen. There was originally 4, but scheduling fuck up.
Yeah, as always. It always happens,
Behind the scenes there.
Yeah. No behind the scenes tidbit.
Yes.
We fucked up with our schedule. I'm a big fan of the character in the book. I named my cat Carrie. She's now currently sat in the room with us.
You dressed as Carrie one Halloween.
I dressed as Carrie one Halloween, went down a storm.
Carrie with a beard is a weird kind of one, but it worked.
It worked. It was a vibe, with a beard, a vape, rather glazed eyes.
Yeah,
I do recall from some substances.
Blood soaked.
We'll say that. Whereas the film, there's obviously, I think there's 4 adaptations of it, excluding The Rage Carrie 2.
Yes.
Which I have watched.
I've not watched that one.
Don't even really need to watch it. Just imagine the end, except instead of a prom, it happens at a house party. That's about it. The difference
pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
Because there was a TV adaptation, I believe, and then there's obviously the Chloe Grace Moretz remake. Yeah. There's this Sister Spacek. What's the other one then, or is it the one that's upcoming? Do you mean?
There is another one.
Is there another Carrie?
I believe there is. Maybe it's the one, the upcoming Mike Flanagan.
I know the TV one. I know there was the TV one, and then there's the upcoming Mike Flanagan one, which sounds very interesting. Loves his Stephen King, that man. So
yeah, he does. But what I find with Carrie, so I remember the most recent time that I read the book, because I got it for Christmas, I don't know, shortly after the Chloe Grace Moretz one came out, because that's the cover of the book that I had. I got it for Christmas one year, read it, really liked it, read it again, and then I read it in kind of April, March last year, the year before maybe. I remember because at a job I was working at, we were switching to another provider, so didn't have any work to do. Yeah. So I just read this book in about 3 days. And I find that the good thing about this book is it's a really short, snappy book. I think it's only about 65,000 words. Yeah. Whereas I think you compare that to Salem's Lot, which I think is about.
That was a weird. I feel like words. That was a weird ass way to describe. You mean like a 180-page book or something like that?
No, because if you said pages, you could have a 180-page version. You could have a 4. Depends on the version. So I do the words.
I've never heard anyone refer to the words of a book.
Well, writers refer to the words.
It might be 180 pages. Yes, it could vary from 160 to 200. Writers. Most versions of the book are around 180 odd pages of a book.
Writers refer to the words because that's
because of how long they're writing. Maybe modern writers who were constantly looking at Word doc to be like, have I written my 500 words today?
Yeah, pretty much based from him.
Back in the day, I don't believe that each one went through and was counting every single word.
No, I think he was. Stephen King was. But yeah, so it's quite a short, snappy thing.
Yeah,
and that's why I have some hesitation about the series, because what I do find about Carrie, and we're talking about the original film, so I think 1976, I think it is. It's it follows the book relatively closely. There isn't too much deviation.
It does. I think because knowing what Mike Flanagan has done with other adaptations and the way that he's never done it Exactly. He's taken inspiration from certain scenes and expanded those scenes into much bigger elements that have actually ended up being like with Doctor Sleep. There were elements where we like said that actually that was better than parts of the book.
Yeah.
And then there were some elements that we weren't so sure. Like things like the ending and stuff was definitely a much more enjoyable cinematic experience than the ending of the book, for instance, where he'd taken inspiration from two versions. I think, and this comes to the book version of Carrie, where just to speak of I did this as my dissertation film. So I had a book of Misery, Shining, and I had Carrie, and that was kind of my inspiration for my Certain Tendencies in Stephen King was the name of my dissertation. So I probably watched a girl go through her period far too many times because you're trying to take all of the analysis out of it that you can. And I probably read through this text, and then I reread it literally like 2 months ago or something like that.
Yeah.
And I completely had forgotten what the novel is like compared to the thing. And I think each of the film adaptations pretty much it takes the essence and the basic structure idea of the film.
Yeah.
And it does justice to that idea. I think though the smaller elements, because the book is not linear. It's told in it's told in fragments. It's told in newspaper report, and it's told in Sue Snell's memoirs. And it's told in all these different fractions as part. And I think there's a lot of like you get to see Carrie. You get like small sections of the book where it's like Carrie as a child. You get the left out of all, but I think the TV series version, the Meteor Strike, is left out of that, and how that comes in is also brought back later in the book. All of those elements about like her past as a child and stuff like that, I can already visualize how Mike Flanagan's going to turn that into an episode that's purely just about this character. Not about like the whole story. I think it will be like, here's the background of Margaret White when she was in the whatever era it's set in. I think it's meant to, this new one is set in modern times though. I think. Yeah. But set in whatever it would. If it was back then, it would be like in the 60s or whatever. What her life was like. So there's a whole that's one episode alone. Like that's a standalone flesh out. The one good thing about Mike Flanagan TV series is he knows how to flesh out the characters. And I think each one of these, although the focus will be on Carrie, I think he'll go more into like this is the life, because you get the life of like even like the bully, you get the background of like in the book you get her father and like what he's like with the father and stuff like that. And although you don't get loads of it, you get enough that I can see him going, I'm going to turn that into part of an episode, or I'm going to turn that into something kind of like whoever it is. I can see how you could, because I do think like the one thing I've come away from this watching, and I haven't rewatched the Chloe Grace Moretz apart from once. I wasn't a big fan of it. I thought it was a overly CGI like kind of, and still doesn't do like, even though it's more violent and action packed, it still doesn't do service to how good the end of this book is. Like how like that has not been done properly. Like, I'm hoping that that's something that Mike Flanagan will do, is do full service to how fucking end of the world the actual ending is going to be, because like this Carrie, obviously our focus here is on Carrie, Brian de Palma's Carrie. Yeah, Brian de Palma. And this one, is not able to, I think, due to budget, it's not able to do what it could have done, kind of thing. Yeah. But it does still stay true. That's the weird thing. It's like it's a true adaptation of the book without giving us a lot of the religious and the kind of bigger budget kind of moments that actually are in the book. There's quite a lot of kind of big scenes of telekinesis and big scenes where she uses her powers and all those things, like the meteorite that happens near the very beginning of the book is not, it's all, not all of that is kind of gone. It's very much a more personal story about Carrie White, I think, the film, which is the story that is the central. It's the bulk of the story. But there's a lot around it, I think, in the book that is kind of just removed, excised. Yeah, and I think Mike Flanagan will go through that, because this film does pick up straight away with that kind of iconic tampon scene. There's a lot of, like watching this back, there's a lot of those things where it's like, this is, you can tell it's the 70s, a lot of like dirty pillows, a lot of teenage girls in short shorts walking. Well, there's literally just scenes of them walking through like as literally like just fully nude, like there's her clothes. Right there, like it literally is like you could watch, like it's basically, I think it's like teen comedies from like the 2000s, like Euro Trip or something like that, like Road Trip, where it's basically has the same scene of people just walking naked for a thing, and But in the 70s and 80s, that was just a
It was
common.
fine, man.
You're making a teen film about teenagers in high school. Of course, we can show them naked.
And it was
That's
fine.
absolutely fine.
It was fine for your teacher to slap you. You know, like, that was fine. It's the same.
Yeah, it literally is that way. But yeah, those things that happened in this film. But you know, that is a shocking like kind of scene. In the book, it's built up to quite a bit more before we get to that kind of like the noticing of her period and things like that. But here, it's it's a traumatizing, it's an iconic kind of scene. Her reaction. I mean, I think Sissy Spacek is great in the role. It's not exactly the role of the book, though. It's not the same Carrie White.
No.
It's a different. She is different in this book,
and that's my problem.
I think a lot of the iterations have not really been like the version in the book.
No, they always cast somebody who's kind of like conventionally decent or good looking. You know, like the whole crux is that Carrie is like she's a bullied kid. Don't get me wrong, but she's like overweight. She wears like dirty clothes. She stinks. Yeah, she's like a pretty like.
It's a weird thing because in the book, it like obviously you've got things like that she's overweight and got acne and things like that.
Yeah.
But then in certain parts of the book, it describes her as actually being, you know, maybe not conventionally, but is described as being pretty at certain things like that.
Certain lights.
And I'm not saying Sissy Spacek or even Chloe in the other version is like they're not they're not ugly.
No, they're
you know what I mean. But I don't think I always felt like that was misinterpreted that Carrie White is an ugly, overweight acne. When I think in the book, at certain scenes, she blends in more with the like other people more than I ever thought she actually would in the book. Whereas in the film, she doesn't really go with anyone. No, she doesn't fit in with anyone in the film.
She's like, well, the whole point is pig's blood for a pig. Because she's big, you know. And so that kind of loses a bit of its symbolism when it's like and even in this film I was like they call her like a fat heifer, or they call her something like they make a comment about like how fat she is, and I'm like I don't know, she's like quite slender.
I mean I always took that as it's Chrissy is the character who's calling her that, who is meant to be overly conventionally skinny, like not skinny but you know like fit, athletic fit girl. So to her, like someone who's even slightly overweight is a fat pig. You know what I mean? Like that's the way her character comes across like that. I never read her as being like proper big. Like she's not like huge, because in the prom scenes later in the book she's described as actually being quite beautiful. Like she's actually said as being like she is not conventionally, she doesn't look the way she is. Like I think she wears a lot of like, she's described with like the dirty but baggy clothing and stuff like that. Like she's hiding her figure like she doesn't trust. That she's not like fat, but then at the same time there's a lot of people with the film that are like, does what happens to Carrie, does the girl that is Sissy Spacek Finn make more sense of someone who's gone through trauma than the girl that's like overweight, who like you feel like the mother wouldn't allow her gluttony, or you know what I mean? Like, and from a religious context you almost feel like in a way the Sissy Spacek version does make sense of someone who's like, if you've got someone who's an overly religious, then she's not going to be like, you keep eating, girl, you keep having it, like is that, you know. And because the mum is described as more overweight in the book as well, though. That's the other thing, because the one complexity, and it is one of the things in this book to film adaptation is, and it's one of the things people have the most problem with, is that the actress who played Carrie's mum in this film basically played it like she literally said she read the script like it was a black comedy, so she played it like it was a black comedy. And you can kind of see that because she's fucking chewing that scenery. You know, she's hamming it up at times. You know, people call her, like, some people really like the performance and say it's like a weird derangedness, and some people say it's a caricature of someone who is mentally deranged. To be fair, I've even said, but even like a great actress like Julianne Moore was pretty much still called to be hamming it up in the other version. I
think she was better.
She probably was better, because Julianne Moore's an excellent actress. I think I remember her being mainly better, but I think people still said that it was still a little bit corny in the, maybe more the script that was necessarily her performance. Kind of thing. I think
across the board, apart from Chloe Grace Moretz, I think the acting is stronger in that version. I think Judy Greer is good as the I forget all of the names. As soon as I watch a film, I just forget all of the names.
I think the problem with that version is the fact that it doesn't do enough different
No.
to the book to make it feel like it was worthwhile, because this film does mainly nail the majority of the story and the idea.
Yeah.
That it's kind of like, why are we remaking something to just make it the same way when, let's be honest, based on the book, there is a lot in the book that could have been added to make a remake actually really stand out, but mainly, as far as I can remember, the remake doesn't do much to make it different.
No, it
pretty much is the same film.
It has some slight changes. Modern gloss. Some slight changes. Some stuff is a bit more kind of authentic to the book.
Yeah.
You know, like, but the main bits are the same, and that's the beauty of it, is that, you know, if you strip off a lot of the like, you know, Sue Snell's memoirs, a lot of the newspaper articles, that sort of stuff, you are left with a very basic kind of story.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is it's a good adaptation in that.
Yeah, for its time and being like first of the Stephen King kind of adaptations and things like that kind of made it out the gate. You know, it's the one that Stephen King said put me on the map. So you know what it is. Even I think he got paid like £2,500, and that's what all he got from this film. Well, you know, but the film didn't have a mega budget either. Well, anyway, so
what happened is he got so the classic story that I'm sure everybody knows is he started writing it, and then he threw it in the bin. And his wife got it out and said, "No, like, this is good. Keep writing it." Yeah. And he wrote it. Apparently, the ending was something to do with Carrie dying in like a plane crash. She makes a plane crash, and then his agent at the time was like, "No, that's like bad. Think of something different." He came up with the great ending that we've got.
Yeah.
But he sold it for, I think, $2,500 the paperback, and then he sold the motion pictures got sold for $250,000. I don't think he would have got all of that, but I think he was an English teacher at the time.
Yeah.
And then he got that, and then obviously Salem's Lot came out, and Shining, and just steamrolled. But yeah, it's wild.
Yeah. Well, according to what I read, he only ended up actually making £2,500 for Carrie. But he said that it got his name on the map, and that's why the other films started to get made, and that's why more people bought his book, because of Carrie. And so, you know, so that kind of helped him get started, and he thinks it's a good adaptation. He even says that the ending is better than his ending in the film.
I disagree on that.
Not that ending, no, the actual end. The ending of the book has the weird, where it's like someone writing a letter of the you know, I'm talking about the very ending of this film, the Sue Snell ending of this film, compared to the it writes a letter from like an some part of the world, like a native kind of part of the world, where they said that my 4-year-old has got telekinesis powers. That's the actual ending of the book, and it is the one bit that's a bit like the rest of it is so good, and then the one bit of just like, I mean, but it's not like an amazing way to end a book kind of thing. Whereas the version in this one, where you've got the hand come out the ground, is a really cool visual of how to end a, you know, and it works kind of well with, actually, if you even in the book, it kind of would have made sense with the whole, like, the way that Sue Snell throughout it is writing a memoir, like she's still kind of, it still has taken over her life kind of thing. So her having that nightmare kind of works well with the story you're told about Sue Snell in the future, like after the events kind of thing. Because that's what a lot of it is. A lot of the book is like telling you, like giving you little pieces of information about what's happened from the future.
It
like
builds it so
early on, like Sue Snell telling you that her life has been kind of ruined and she's always blamed for it, and you're like, well, why? What happened? Like, what did you actually do? And it finally pieces together by the end. It's like, that's what I really like about it, is it's kind of like an investigation. I'd kind of like to see whether, if we're going to play it linear or whether we're going to play it as more of a let's slowly build these pieces, would be the way that if I wanted to make a TV series of it, or like, you can't do it with a film, but as a TV series, that's how I can see how you can make it, because you got to make it like you could even technically make it like, it would have been interesting to see that someone would make this in like almost like one of those documentary styles of like making it like people having interview, like you could almost make the book into that adaptation of like different styles. But the film obviously plays it completely like straight, and just, as we said, strips out a lot of that stuff, keeps the main story of the streamlined story of what is Carrie White's journey on this kind of thing.
I think
it works.
One main difference, so we get the the religious themes kind of running very heavily through it, Margaret White is a great character, and she's so sinister and so kind of like oppressive in the book that when you're reading it, you're like, oh, fuck, I want to be rid of her.
She's she is so manipulative of Carrie, and the way she uses her. When she thinks she's got the power over, obviously in the book the powers are more, with Carrie are actually more like shown, but she's been so oppressed by her mum that it literally is like kind of somewhat like she wouldn't even then she still doesn't quite dare, even though she does at times, like the Meteoros, like she tries to use that against her when it says you can't go to the prom and stuff like that. But the mum is so like twisted, like the way that it's like that she tried to kill Carrie because she's a sin.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like
should have killed her when she was
I only had sex. I had sex with your father, like basically like the one time and things like that. And I enjoyed it, but because of that, out of that is sin. You were my sin. You are, and she's a true like kind of and you do, and some of the scary parts of the film, to be fair, are the parts when we do get Margaret White. When we get the stuff like she's like locking her into rooms and things like that, when it doesn't always, those are the parts sometimes when I didn't feel like it felt like her performance was way over the top. It was more the kind of when she's like talking to people that it felt like every piece of dialogue had to be like up here, like heightened. Well, like that was my problem.
She kind of is even in the book. She's kind of that character.
Yeah,
she has a couple of confrontations. I remember being really young when I first saw this film. And I kind of remember flashes of it, but the bits in the house where she keeps her in the cupboard, and just how dark and dingy that house is always stuck with me. And even when I watched it today, I was looking at it and I was like, I can't look at this house. It makes me feel so grimy.
Yeah,
when they're sat around the table and they're eating by candlelight, and it's like
all the crosses
so
and the Jesus
regressive.
and everybody around and stuff like that.
Yeah,
that's one of the things I think is well adaptation from the idea that you get of the house, of it being very much like everything is like a very Catholic, very like there's all of these imagery, and it at times describes imagery of like God and the devil, and like there's like pictures that are described in the book that I think this gives a good. In the film, gives a good like representation of that, and I think it's I don't know. Those are the parts that really at times do work really well in this film, where you are feeling that kind of pressure from them, but it's not always consistent with that kind of. One thing that actually does, like, there's a look about the film now. Like you can tell, yes, it's made in 1976. There is a look of there's an age. Like about the style of it that kind of is somewhat reminds you maybe more of like it's shot at times. It feels a little bit more like TV kind of like of the style. One thing I don't like about this film, for the most part, there are some good bits of it, but I think the music is not good.
Oh,
the music's terrible. Like that weird, very corny, soap opera style music,
and like quite a riff of Psycho at some points.
Yeah, the bits when it uses that for like the telekinesis is one of the few where it's like it's okay, it's not bad, but it feels ripped off. But I hate those bits when it goes into these really like almost like light-hearted daytime soap kind of the music that plays in. That was one thing that did kind of get to me every time it played in it, because it played over scenes where it's like, why is this music playing over this weird kind of, she's just been fucking thrown in a cupboard and now you're going to start playing some nice daytime music. Like what's going, it literally sounded like the stuff you'd like, that stereotype of the music you'd hear in a lift. Yeah, like, you know what I mean? It's that kind of stuff. It's like, what is this kind of crap that you're... Like, it is one of the weaker parts of it, where I don't think it makes it lighthearted or things like that. It just takes you out of the moment. It's not a great soundtrack at all.
No.
It's not classic.
What do you think of Chrissy Higgins and Billy? Is it Mr. John Travolta? So,
Chrissy Higgins, and especially Billy, is a fucking psychopath in the book.
Yeah.
He is a full-on psycho. He beats her, he thinks. In the book, Mr. John Travolta, in the film, Mr. John Travolta does not get any of that material.
He's a bit of an arsehole.
He's an arsehole, and he hits her. Yeah, he does that. But in the book,
it was the 70s.
In the book, we get... But yeah, it was the 70s.
It was a YI order.
Yeah, it's the YI order.
Not like a serious hitting.
That's my problem. In this, in many ways, in the book, it's implied that yes, although like in the film, I feel like Chrissy is played much more of the mastermind of everything.
Yeah.
Whereas in the book, Billy's the one that takes everything the extra step, even further than Chrissy could almost imagine. Like that. Chrissy is still very much like a part of that, but Billy really loves the idea of fucking someone over this badly. Like he's like the stuff that you hear about him, like what the way he does, like drive down the road, the way he's almost looking for something to kill, the way he loves it when they go to basically kill the pig,
yeah.
you know, things like that. The violence of that's shown in the book, that like it has more sections that describing like the things he does or how he acts at home. Again, another character I think can be quite fleshed out. And he is cut down very much in the film. So I'm fine with John Travolta's performance. He's fine with what he gets to do in terms of that, and in terms of his role within this film. Again, if you're streamlining it, then you somewhat understand it. He gets enough things that he gets to be there. He's one character that Chrissy I think is good in the film. I think Chrissy's really well done. I think she gets to still be pretty much about the same character she is without the only thing in the film they take away is actually in the book she gets a little bit more of a slight sympathy of actually the way that Billy treats her.
Yeah.
Whereas in the film it's not really so much there. It's kind of like, well, she's a fucking bitch, isn't she?
Yeah.
But she's a well played bitch.
Yeah, she's good. I like Tommy Ross.
Yeah, Tommy Ross is good in the film as well. I think he's not exactly a greatly like. I think actually he's one that is in the book. I actually felt like he was a little bit bland anyway, and I think in the film they actually make him feel somewhat more heartthrobbish.
Yeah, they do. However,
because in the book he is like, he at times feels like an afterthought. Sometimes like he's killed in the book, the way it's like kind of again getting smashed on the head and he's like dead and he's lying there, but you kind of get a feeling like they just describe him like he's just the guy that everyone kind of forgets anything happened to him. He is the afterthought kind of thing. Like no one really remembers that was once the guy there, because in all the trauma he's a blip in it.
Well, I think they mention about him taking her to the prom, because
they do in the book. Yeah, it's all there.
But they do like they kind of lead up to it, and then about halfway through maybe they have a section about the massacre at the prom.
Yeah.
And then it goes back to the main story.
Yeah.
And I think it builds tension so well. But no, I like
in the film. I think he gets more fleshed out.
There's more to do. Because I think in the book he literally
you get more about Sue and him, like why they're doing this actually in the book. To be fair. But I think that's told well enough in the film. You get the whole why he's doing it.
Yeah.
You do get the really weird film with him and his mates where they're getting ready for prom,
and then it speeds up quickly.
Yeah, and it does like a Benny Hill, and it's like it's really out of place. And it's
so weird
again, and it's got some fucking terrible music again with it. Again, kind of Benny Hill music, and it's like. What like
why?
It's some of those tonal inconsistencies that like when you're watching it, they do at times make you be like, I mean, I can understand why someone might not like this film.
Yeah, it's so weird.
Like everyone remembers like the prom, or the period scene, but there is a lot of stuff in the middle of this film that I feel like most people just forget.
Yeah,
you don't remember how they get to those connecting points. You remember the early telekinesis stuff. You maybe remember the mum in the closet. And you remember the ending in the high school prom and the car and stuff. But I feel like there is a lot of this film that a lot of people probably forget. And it's one thing that in the book, for instance, is nicely kind of spread around and spread out, that it actually really keeps your attention because you're almost looking for more details. Whereas because it's streamlined in the film, you're a little bit kind of like, okay, we're seeing mum do some crazy shit, but there's also just a lot of kind of like the teenager who's waiting for the prom date and the and the anxiety of Carrie and stuff like that. That's kind of building through. Again, like I think Sissy Spacek gives a very good performance there. I'm
good. Very hit and miss on it. You know?
Really?
Yeah, because sometimes I feel like. So the one thing I want to say about Tommy Ryan before we move on is his death is dog shit in this version. It's so horrendous in the film.
Oh, what? Just the whacked on the head?
Yeah, because in the book he gets hit on the head.
I couldn't even tell in this version whether he was definitely dead or if he was just lying there.
In the book he gets hit, and they describe like the big puddle of blood.
Oh yeah,
how he's like
he's wriving on the ground, and like, people aren't sure if he's alive or dead and things like that. Yeah,
and it's quite like, oh god. And then in the Chloe Grace one, he he gets hit on the head, he falls, I think he breaks his neck, which is better. Whereas in this one, it's almost like Looney Tunes-esque. He gets knocked on the head and falls over.
Well, it's all slow motion at that point, though, isn't it? When it comes down, isn't it? Slow oh no, it goes slow motion, then it speeds up, and then you get a quick bang. That's pretty much it.
And it's like, is he even dead?
Yeah.
Like, you know,
I think you just get to assume that even if he's not, well, he is dead when he burns inside there. He's not dead.
But even the end, and I don't like apart from the bit with the mother's death, I don't think I really like the telekinesis in this film. I think it's done really bad.
There's not huge amounts of it, to be honest. That is one big difference, I think, from the book, where you get multiple scenes that I mean, you do get, say, like, I think it's the same in the book where you get the cigarette ashtray.
Yeah.
That kind of the breaking or the like that bit. That bit was kind of said in the book, but there's no like that Carrie's got this huge underlining power. No, it's not very well built up. Like, as I said, like that scene that is described at the beginning of the meteor shower coming down and literally like destroying parts of their house because of how angry she is at her mother in the book, which is described like but I guess I think what Brian De Palma is doing here is that he's trying to more make it as in like this is the period really is the first time, which is something that's in this film that's not really so much the book, which is the period is the true like coming alive of the powers. Like now that she's matured a woman, it almost makes it seem like it's actually fully coming out because there's no scenes before that happens of the telekinesis, and then it seems like so he almost uses it as this is a blossoming. It's a theme, it's an idea of, you know, how maturity and how you're changing and how she becomes an adult and how she's fighting back in that same way and how she does. And that's why you see the powers build throughout the film to a boiling point kind of thing. Yeah. Which is a clever way to use it, but it feels very much lower powered than the book version.
But and it also feels a bit just like the ashtray just like flies up. Yeah, whereas in the book, I think it just like cracks.
I think it does it like it cracks, or it'll even like splinters into bits.
And it's only when she's in the bedroom and she moves something that she starts to realise that she has the power to do it, and it becomes more conscious. And they leave that out in this. It's very Harry Potter in the remake, but I don't know. Even like I like her performance throughout the film. But it's as it gets like that, the very end scene, you know, the very iconic one. She's great all the way up until that, but then I feel like once the shit kicks off,
you mean the blood scene?
Yeah. I feel like it's an iconic image, but I feel like she's kind of just like stood there.
Well, she's got like it's the eyes. I think that a lot of people say is the kind of part of the iconic is the big screaming eyes because she's just like staring like her face. I think it's one of the hard things to show, to be fair. The telekinesis to make it look good without it looking too much like that. I mean, you know, Danny DeVito did it with Matilda pretty well.
But
that was the prequel.
Because it's in the book, it's so kind of, you know, it's really bloody, and the whole thing sets afire, and she locks the doors, and people are getting stampeded and that kind of thing. Whereas in this, like, it's just like.
This is the part out of all of it. You know, there are many things that you know that are reduced down. You know, we get a lot more kind of sense of the world, like before this event, during this event, and after this event in the book, and we get that all scattered around in like a weird non-linear way. But you get to get a much more of a sense of the impact that this had. That this was a proper turning point for this town. This was an end of the world scale kind of destruction of what this girl's powers can be. So that's the only hard thing of when you've gone from, I can see how someone who's gone from reading that to then having this much more like smaller contained story, it doesn't feel as, you know, obviously we'll get to the aftermath of the prom bit, but the prom bit, you know, you get, like you said with Tommy, you get the literally the on the ground, bleeding, convulsing, going, you know, you've got Carrie kind of literally kind of going into, and the thing is, one thing actually with the Carrie characters, here she is much more, she is the pushover, she is the quiet, she's shy, she's weary, she's thin, you know, that's what she is. In the book, she's actually a little bit less of a lovable character. she has described much more as, one, she gets a little bit more in with the girls, and kind of, the sooner she gets that power, she becomes much more, as soon as she gets, like, say, in with the girls at the prom and stuff like that, she actually gets a bit more, like, backstabby. Like, she actually turns on, like, when someone else is kind of pointed out in the crowd, she goes along with everyone else in the thing, and she has a lot more of those kind of scenes in the book where she's actually quite, like, negative towards other people and things like that. So you get more of this sense of someone who's got this building anger inside of them.
Yeah.
Whereas in the film, you don't really get so much of that. It's more someone who just breaks because they've had so much shit thrown at them, kind of thing. Whereas, but I guess in the film, it is much more contained to just the people at school and at home, and it is just that. Whereas in the book, there is a generational trauma of things throughout the whole town that have done to her. And that's why there's a destruction of the entire town. Yeah. Not just that. Whereas in the film, it does make sense that mainly the only people that she's after is the people at school and the people at home, because she's not really got any... You've got no sense outside of those two things in the film anyway. You only ever see those two things. You don't see anyone else. Not that that doesn't still work of, like, her destruction through, and it wouldn't have been still amazing to see, but I don't think, like as I said, the budget wouldn't have worked back then. No. But the prom. So when that, the blood comes down, and it is, I think it's iconic, it's one of the few times that the music does work in the film. I think the music that goes off, the screeching kind of music, which is a bit Psycho-esque, but it does work with the scene, with that. It's very in its style, where you've got, like, those kind of reactions of people that go on, like, it jumps around a little bit of people's reactions of what's going on and things like that. It did, to be fair, it had actually more blood and stuff than I remembered it having, to be fair, because it does have, like, blood where an explosion goes off and people get, like, splattered in blood, and you get someone, like, electrocuted. In fact, the gym teacher gets electrocuted, doesn't she, at the side? She gets crushed. She gets, like, kind of crushed or something against the side of something. Some people get electrocuted. There was more actually to it than I actually remember, to be fair. When I was rewatching it, I thought, I remember it mainly just being like, there's just a fire, a couple of people trip over, some people tried to get out the door. But it does actually show a bit more of, like, her, like, shutting the door out, like, Sue on the other side, that she's trying to get in, and she literally shuts the door, like, people getting, like, smashed against the door a little bit more. You get a bit more people, like, getting thrown around and stuff.
I don't think it did. I think it's all because they kind of wash it in this red.
Yeah, they do.
But my thoughts of it was, you see a few people kind of by the door, but it's mainly just like a fire hose. Like a fire hose kills.
The fire hose kills people because that's the electric. People get electrocuted from that thing, don't they?
One the girl wearing the hat just gets hosed, and she's against the table dead. And
I definitely remember, because I remember them, like, screaming to get out the door, because I remember Sue being on the other side and them, like, really trying as they're, like, getting pushed closer. But Carrie's, like, it shows Carrie, like, looks, and then like, shuts the door, things like that. I remember the gym teacher getting crushed, like, kind of against the side.
Yeah, she gets
against the side.
Kind of hat.
Yeah, or whatever drops down on
her.
That kind of thing. And be like, because I actually, I forgot that she even died in the film. I thought she survived in the film.
I always remember, because she's one of the few people who's kind of okay to Carrie, Yeah. And it's that thing of, there's always the argument about whether does Carrie cross over into being a villain.
Yeah,
that's often.
I mean, she definitely does. Yeah, she murders an entire gym full of people.
Does,
you know what I mean? She does worse to them than they ever technically did to her. You know what I mean?
And I think a lot
it doesn't fit the crime. The crime doesn't really fit the punishment.
No,
except for maybe Chrissy. In this film, maybe she deserves it. She does.
But yeah, I think she is like a sympathetic character.
Yeah,
but it's then it gets to a point.
That's why I think, though, I do think in the film she is played much more as a sympathetic character than I think she is in the book. I think there's more clear signposts for her becoming this person and her fighting back against it and her general hate for the world around her than there is in the film. I think the film makes such a sympathetic character that is those things. But I don't know. I remember liking the the prom scene and the gym scene, I remember it being more than, because I thought it was I thought originally, from what I'd remembered, that it was mainly very tame, that there wasn't a lot to it. But I remember I remember looking at it and being like, oh, some of this for 1976, some of the practicalities of what happens in that scene with the fire, with the thing, even the amount of firework that is going on, with the pyrotechnics and stuff like that in certain scenes, I'm like, that's actually pretty impressive that they've built that around her burning and things like that. Like, I thought it was quite impressive, and again, it's for the budget of the time,
and that's it. It's putting it into context and perspective like that. Because
whereas that one whole scene is like just one description of one thing getting exploded in the book.
Quite a bit happens in the book.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. Like, that one prom scene is basically like, that's a blip compared to the book.
To like what happens.
The next thing, and this bit is pretty in the book, and the car scene where the car gets kind of thrown and exploded with Chrissy and Billy to the side of it. That bit with them, which is it happens quite quickly, but that's
very
kind of
quickly.
It just comes, and again, this is a little sign of the time where you very much see the way that the cut happens from where the car comes to the car just flipping.
Yeah,
like you can see it's like two different things that have been sliced onto film together, because it kind of like jumps for a second, where it kind of like the film unnaturally jumps, the car unnaturally flies through the air. I think the look of Sissy Spacek has become so iconic of her in that blood, though.
Definitely.
With her very porcelain kind of skin, it does very much work with her look. Like, that visual of the character is almost one that's hard to overcome. The other actresses playing it, but there's just something about the way that she's got, such clear pale skin and things like that makes the blood just look so much
really
more deeper.
out,
but that's kind of the thing. So this is that point where the car's flipped over, things like that, where it then goes back to her house and goes back to her mother, whereas in the book, this is when we've now got a huge trail of destruction that literally causes, like,
because there's a massive split in the street, doesn't it?
Yeah, you've got a whole crack down it, you've got buildings exploding, you've got gas lines that literally go up, making a crater in the ground.
Yeah.
You've got huge amounts of people that are killed, murdered, cars that are getting crashed around.
Yeah.
You've got it describes, the bloodiness of people getting murdered, or her basically walking past as people like scream for help while they're being burned alive, and it's a really graphic, but for me, like, from Forgetting How is literally like, it's hard to describe, but in the book he does a really amazing job of describing this scale of this destruction. It's literally it literally is an emergency event. It's calling people from outside of the state to come in order, and it talks about the scale of which it was to rebuild that town, because he basically demolished the town. Like, it's literally gone. The amount of people, the level of death and things like that must have occurred, and I'm sure in the book, I can't remember, but it does. I think it tells you some kind of a number of the fact. Like, I think it was in the thousands, if I'm honest, but like,
I can't remember.
It's a mass
big destruction.
It's a mass destruction. That it's a huge trail that leads all the way back home, kind of thing. Does it work that way, or is Mum already dead? No,
it
does.
that way.
No, it does work that way.
Yeah, she gets
it does work that way. It does. That is the same as like the film, but we don't get the destruction in between. We get the car and then home in the film, whereas in the book you get a whole trail of again, not in that order. It's told out of order.
Yeah, because when she gets home, her mum basically stabs her. Tries to kill
this
her.
Is one bit that I think is an improvement over the book. I think it's a much more visualized version of telling it, not necessarily the way that Carrie goes, but I mean the way the mother goes.
I'm torn.
In the book, it is quite simple. In the book, it's her mum tells her about that she's a sin, and she kind of gives her a bit of a monologue about how she's in the book, and in the film as well. She also gives her like, you are a sin, I enjoyed it, and that's why you are, you deserve to die. And Mum's hiding the knife behind her back, and she stabs Carrie. At a point when Carrie's very much just trying to almost. You don't actually get the feeling that in the film necessarily that Carrie's coming home to kill her mother. Carrie's coming home
Carrie's coming home.
She's coming home, like to have like a bath and basically get over what's just happened, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then it turns into a, because I forget it has a point where it doesn't just go straight into I'm going to kill you destruction. It actually has a point where it's like I'm going to have a bath and I'm getting the blood off of me and I'm actually getting thing. And then it's like the mother comes at her kind of thing like this and starts to, and she says like I'm powerful, like, but this was mother building up because she told her like you're not going to the prom, and that's when she uses her powers to scare her mother and be like, I am more powerful than you now. I don't need you anymore. Yeah. And again, in the book,
they're all going to laugh.
A bit different. Yeah, they're all going to laugh at you. That bit's quite well played in the film to make it kind of very much like, like the repeating of the voices and the things like that, which is a quite iconic kind of thing of the way it goes around her head. They're all going to laugh at you kind of thing. Like the way that mum like manipulates her head, that she still does it, but she still gets in her head is quite good. Whereas in the book, it's much more like I'll basically bring a meteor back down on your house if you don't let me. Like if you don't realise that this is happening. Like I am way overpowered compared to you, mum. You can't do it. So mum comes across a bit more kind of broken at that point in the book. Yeah. Whereas in the film, she's still like, how can I get her back to the point where she's like, I need to kill her. She's a devil. She's a demon. Kind of thing.
Yeah. And I think that works in the book because
and it does.
She's like,
she gets stabbed in both versions. Yeah. By mum. Like that's Carrie's downfall is still mum in both versions. But in the book, she stops her heart. Yeah. She just basically uses her telekinesis to just crush her heart, so she just dies. Yeah. And there's not a great deal to it. Like it's as I say, because the surrounding stuff of it, like the way that mum talks and the backstory and the ideas we get and the scariness of mum is stronger in the book. So it feels like more of a like this is like it kind of works more in the book, but I do think it would have been a kind of a downer in the film to have been how it plays out. Yeah. Whereas the much more visualized version especially actually to be honest with the performance of the actress. Yeah. It works better that it's quite over the top in the whole knives crucifixion. Yeah. Crushing mum and then the house burning around them, and that's how they're both taken out.
And the crucifixion mimics the little idol she's got in
the one she looks at in the room when she's stuck in there that has the kind of the blood of the thing. Yeah,
so it has the same.
I think it works much better as a visual kind of version. I think that's one of the couple of things that was a improved version of like I think the visuals of the book. Because it's not huge. It doesn't feel like a huge moment. It didn't feel as big a moment for me in the book. Whereas in the film, this is one of the big moments of the film, kind of thing. Yeah. Finally getting mum, back.
Well, because if I recall correctly, she doesn't. In the book, she doesn't really want to kill her mum, does she?
No,
I think she does.
Yeah. I think it. I think
she
the mum reacts in the film. Yeah, to her with more knives because she stabs her.
Yeah. Whereas in the book, I seem to recall that
her mum's heart's slow. She doesn't actually crush it.
No, she slows it until she dies because she won't stop.
Yeah.
So she's saying like,
please don't, because she cries when Carrie actually dies in Sue's arms in the book. Yeah. She cries for her mother. She cries that her mother that she's done this. There's a little element of kind of in the book which I think where it's kind of a little bit of, although she's taken this revenge of things, there's almost a kind of that she almost is not fully in control of how she's doing everything, and that she's somewhat letting it take over, that she's not fully in control of any of this stuff. Whereas I think, although her mother's death is like with the knives and stuff, I feel like in the book by that point she is much more like she's using her powers kind of thing. She's doing it. She's doing this, she's bringing down the house, she's killing herself with her mother because now she doesn't know what to do and she doesn't know that kind of thing. Kind of plays into again those themes of maturity, the teenagers, the struggle, the anxiety, depression, that I think is very much a theme that's made a focus of the film, more so maybe than it is at times of the book, which I think there was a kind of a bigger religious context that there is to the book than there is to the film, even though it's there in the film in bits. Yeah. Because in the thing she finally goes back out, and she basically dies in the forest basically while she's held by Sue and says, and Sue gets to show her, because Sue is Sue, you get to understand a bit more of what actually happened, that Sue's actually been blamed for most of this, and than you do in the film. In the film, Sue mainly still ends up feeling kind of like not much better than half of the the other girls.
Well,
She gets the later on scenes when she tries to help her, but that's pretty much the majority of it. Whereas the one in the book obviously gets a lot more because she gets both future her and past her, and you get more elements to her. To understand that actually she never meant her ill will, like even being there when she died to help her, is kind of, she gets to like read. She uses her telekinesis to like read her mind and see that actually Sue didn't mean for any of this to happen. She was just part of that first thing, and that's about it. Whereas you get the like, even like in the film, like Sue ends up being more like, she goes to the prom because she's actually like, oh shit, I should go. I mean, it seems less for Carrie and more for like, oh shit. What if Carrie White bangs my boyfriend?
Well, he does just kiss her, doesn't he? He just randomly kisses her.
Yeah, but that's one of the nicer Tommy Ross things, and I think that plays out even more in the thing is that actually you get a feeling that actually Tommy Ross actually does kind of end up liking her, and he doesn't actually realise that that's going to happen, which is a nice element to it. But then in the book they play more of that, like Sue is actually now like, oh fuck, what's going to happen here? So it doesn't feel quite like it's for her, like to help Carrie so much as it does in the book, maybe, where it feels like actually Sue's not really the criminal, and she's right, but she spent her whole life basically being blamed for everything that happened because you're the one that caused the Carrie to start off. You did this to Carrie. You're one of those girls. That's what she's blamed for in the book. Whereas in the film, that's not an element of it, kind of thing. And Chrissy is pretty much the main one to blame. To be fair, she's Chrissy and the mother.
Well, I mean, let's talk the ferry ending, because the film has the very iconic kind of dream sequence. Everything's very kind of bright white. I find it really funny because there's the bit where there's like the doctor's voiceover and they're talking about Sue and they're like, don't worry, she's young, she'll forget all about this one day. And I was thinking that, like, if she was like 4 or 5, you'd be like, she might forget all of this. If you're like 18 and you're like you're somebody you went to school with killed everyone, you're not going to be like, oh shit, that happened. You'll be like,
oh my god, did we do that?
Oh, we did that. Oh yeah, that was weird, wasn't it? That was odd. But, you're not going to forget.
It's not quite the same. No. It's not like being a child compared to being basically a full adult and being like, yeah, no, I still remember being like nearly burned to death.
Yeah, your
boyfriend. I
still
remember watching my boyfriend burn on the ground. Yeah. Like, I still remember all that shit.
Being on the other side of like 20 people dying. Yeah. But then you get the great, Carrie White burns and hell on the cross, the crumpled, ruined house, and then her hand kind of like bursting.
I really like the whole, it's one element that I think they've used to add an extra kind of element of destruction that kind of in somewhat plays homage to the idea of the destruction of the book by having the house kind of basically collapsing, destroying, building into itself, and then that kind of ending scene of here's the created mess of everything that kind of happens.
Yeah.
I think that's a nice way to kind of play into what isn't quite that, because it's not like that in the book kind of thing of having all of that extra added on bit of destruction. I think it's their way of being like, we can maybe have the house be destroyed, we can't afford to destroy an entire town.
Yeah. But then there is something I like about the ending of the book, because it kind of goes back to that like cyclical nature, coming of age kind of thing.
Yeah.
In the book, one thing that they remove from this is that in the book, Carrie's dad dies, whereas in the movie, he's left, he's bolted.
Yeah, just a drunk.
But the books, her grandmother has the power, has telekinesis as well. So it's kind of like an inherited thing. And I like the idea that there's somebody else. There's the potential for another Carrie out there. However, would this have happened if Carrie had been treated better by people? So I like the kind of the potential of like, could this happen again? Like, is this just like a rite of passage for people?
Yeah. I get the idea of the continuation. I just thought after everything kind of went through and the story it was telling, the letter just felt like a kind of I don't know. It felt like an add-on kind of thing. It didn't feel like the end of. It felt like part of this story, but it just felt like the story kind of ended and then we're just going to add on like an epilogue maybe, or so,
maybe.
you know what I mean, a little bit more like that kind of thing, which obviously like that wasn't going to work for the film anyway. Like I think the very cinematic, you know, version, the kind of very like what feels like a very 70s or 80s kind of like shock ending, like works quite well. It's quite an iconic jump scare.
It's great.
It is great. It's just very different, and it's the same thing, you know. I think that the film's very good, and I think it is very true to the essence of the story, and I think it tells the main plot very well. And I think for the most part it works really well. It's visually well. I think it's well cast. Yes, there's, you know, differences between character. It can't achieve the level of destruction, and I think that's the same with the telekinesis. It just can't do those things. It can't do, you know, I can't imagine what it would have looked like to try and do the meteor strike or things like that back then. You know what I mean? And it is one of those things. It's the reason why, you know, and that's like we said, like with the remake or whatever. That's why it's like confusing. That it's like, well, now you have CGI. You could have done half that stuff, but you still didn't. You do a bit more destruction, but you don't do like seismic kind of level of like destruction. Like you don't take it far enough. It's one of those things that I think that's still the untapped potential of this story, to tell it in that a bit more of a maybe non-linear, a bit more strange way, have that destruction. But I also think there is a lot of stuff in the book that taps a deeper understanding of telekinesis in the family, the background of Carrie White, the background of Margaret White, you know, or even just like the way that, you know, as Stephen King often does, like having characters like the Billy character having much more of a kind of idea of his background and stuff. I think those are the untapped potential, which I really hope that Mike Flanagan does not just do we're just going to tell that part of the story again. I really hope he's going to tap into all of the different. Imagine he will. I want to see all the other. I want to see all the rest of the stuff in the book, because the other one's been well told and we know it, kind of thing. It's not that we don't want to see that, but I think I can almost imagine that being the part that he somewhat reimagines and maybe changes, whereas the background stuff might be the stuff that we finally get. I just hope that they've given them enough budget that he can do the destruction level that we'd like to see. Hopefully. Because in my mind, that was proper levels of like watching, like, you know, like almost watching like a war film where you see just things just fucking blowing, like Black Hawk Down or something, where just the... You know, it's just going up. It's going off. You know what I mean? It is war and stuff. Yeah, it's going mad, kind of thing.
I agree with you on that. I think he could do it. I think the story, especially if it's told non-linear, and they do, you know, the time after a bit more before fleshing out the world. I think that would be interesting. But I don't know.
Hope it is.
How many episodes you'll be able to get out of it. Being completely honest.
Well, I mean, that's the plus side of now, to be fair. You only, like, now they can make it for however many he felt that he could actually tell stories for. So it might be 6, might be 8, I don't know.
Many monologues.
So it depends how many monologues.
How many
monologues per episode as well. You're also going to have that. But to be fair, I mean, Margaret White's perfect because she's got a lot of monologues that you can write into the story. So he's got the right for a monologue or two of a couple of characters. Just not every episode.
Not every episode, not every character.
But every time. But I think when looking at the two, so I mean, you know, this, like, Carrie's also, I believe, on I Must See Horror as well, things like that. I think and I do think that this is it is a classic film. It has parts that have not aged amazingly in some ways. It has some things that can't live up to the book in the same way, like, and it has elements, you know, like the music and stuff, which is terrible, but you know, and some of those weird scenes that are very like 60s 70s style, that you know, like that prom scene, the getting ready for the prom scene with the boys and things like that, and even a few of those like weird shots of like the red lights and the people's faces popping up around, you know, that's very, very of the time that, you know, maybe doesn't always look the best now. But there are many practical things I think that are great works here. I think the performances are mainly very strong. Margaret White is an idea of taste. I thought that she was over the top a bit too much, to be honest. That is a problem of her. But for me personally, you know, looking at book v film, that's a kind of question. I mean, I can't remember actually if we did this with Americans. Like, did we say which one we preferred? I can't remember. I feel like it's in the title to say which one. And same. Like for me, like I remember with Doctor Sleep, I remember saying I think I actually preferred the film to the book, but not because of all of it. I just thought it was a better kind of translation of everything of The Shining and everything. This one, for me, I forgot how good the book is.
Oh, that book's right.
Like I'd read it before, but I don't think it had the same impact. But the book is just works so well. It tells the story in such interesting ways. It's weird that you don't constantly follow a character, and I feel like you get to know them in ways you never thought you quite could.
Yeah.
Whereas the film is actually quite a simplistic version in a way. It's true to the main plot, but it is like it feels to me almost simplistic in comparison to the book.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, and I think that's unfortunately the summary for most. Most adaptations.
It is for most adaptations.
It fails to adapt it fully.
Well, yeah. Well, that is. I mean, it's hard in a film to translate certain things. I mean, technically, and the style of this is hard to translate in that same way.
Yeah.
And I think it's how much you read into it. That's why I think I think it's a good adaptation. I think it is a good adaptation.
I think it is.
It was the first version, and it told it very well. And I think there's a lot of ways that people who read the book wouldn't be disappointed, but there are obviously some things that they just can't bring to life.
Yeah.
In that same way, and you can look at it, and this is the thing. Yeah, most of the time we're probably going to say the book because the book can be thing. But then again, sometimes adaptations can translate in a way that it's not the same as the book, that it almost feels like its own thing to stand alone.
Yeah,
I think that the main part of this is so close to the main part of the book, just without those extra depth that the book allows, that it's hard to say that it is, because it's not a completely different translation either.
Yeah.
It's not almost like, where you could almost look at, say, like American Psycho and American Psycho the film, and be like, there are things that are different, but there are also things that work in different ways that are separate from each other, things like that. And that's the same with each one we go through. But yes, that's pretty much all I've got to say.
Well, I concur. And I would say, if you've read Carrie, if you've seen the film, come and let us know which you prefer. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at CMDH Podcast. As always, please hit that subscribe button and leave us a lovely review. We will see you next week for another book versus film. Maybe some hot takes coming. But until then, play us out, boys.